It's for that person that's either that's new to investing, that wants to get started, wants to start to build a portfolio. And just as the podcast title alludes to, we want to be your guides for finding financial freedom through real estate.
Welcome to the Break Free Real Estate Podcast, your daily guide to financial freedom through real estate. I'm your host, Jocelyn Kaufman, and I'm here with my co-host, David Robinson. And today we wanted to introduce the podcast to our listeners. So this is our very, very first podcast, and we want you guys to learn and understand what you can expect from us. So David, do you want to start it off with who you think this podcast is for?
Yeah. So, this podcast is going to be specifically for people that are newer investors. That investor that maybe is younger in age and is ready to buy their very first investment property. It could also be someone who has always had the hopes and the desire to invest in real estate, but has put it off for many reasons. I was one of those guys. I knew that I needed to be investing, but I put it off for so long. In fact, I put it off for over a decade. And you'll hear a little bit about my story a little bit later. But it's for that person that's either that's new to investing, that wants to get started, wants to start to build a portfolio. And just as the podcast title alludes to, we want to be your guides for finding financial freedom through real estate. And that's why the podcast is titled Break Free, because we want you to be able to break free of the shackles, the financial shackles that bind us down and help and cause us to live lives that are smaller than we should really be living. And that's the whole purpose of the podcast, is to start people down the right track by educating new investors that want to get started in investing in real estate.
Awesome. Thanks for that, David. And just so you guys know, this podcast, we want to do all different types of episodes. So I'm going to interview other brand new investors once a week and give you guys kind of just that inspiration / introduction into real estate. David and I are going to hop on, some short episodes a few times a week and talk about topics that new investors or starting out investors would need to know. And then about 1 or 2 times a week, you'll just get to hear my beautiful voice for, some time, maybe talking about something that David and I didn't hit on fully, or something of its complete separate, something that's completely separate from everything. So just know that there's going to be a lot of variety and you're going to learn a lot every single episode. And yeah, David, why did you want to start this podcast? Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I've been in the real estate business for a long time. It's virtually all I know professionally. I've been a real estate agent and a broker for going on 18 years now here in Utah. And my business was focused mainly, there's been some different transitions, but for the most part, the first decade of my business was focused on the traditional residential resale space. So I was a real estate agent, helping clients buy and sell their own personal properties. Then I transitioned to more of sales management, team building. I even managed a national franchise brokerage. But I had been over a decade in this business, and I hadn't owned any rental investment property. And I look back on that, and that was the biggest mistake that I made. And I knew different, but I kept on coming up with reasons why, okay, I'll do it on the next deal, right? Or on the next deal, or okay, I'll sell this one to a client, I'll buy the next one. And next thing I know, over a decade's gone by, and I hadn't built any significant amount of cash flow or wealth in my world. And I'll say that's a very hard place to start from. And Jocelyn and I have 2 completely different stories. And I'm going to encourage you to follow her example initially. But I also know that there's plenty of you out there right now that are listening that are well beyond your, early 20s that think, oh my gosh, too much time has passed and I may not be able to get started. So I just want to speak to those people for the moment, because that's sort of my world. I spent a decade in the business, front lines of real estate without investing. Then when I realized there's a big life event I would say, that caused me to reflect on where I was financially and that I hadn't done nearly enough to put my family and myself in a position that I wanted to put them in. And that's when I made the transition to investment property. I wound down everything I was doing on just traditional residential brokerage business, and I started a boutique real estate brokerage that was focused exclusively on serving investors because I wanted to be in closer proximity to investors. From there, that led me to buying my very first commercial multifamily property. Actually, the very first property that I've ever owned was a commercial multifamily property, a 14-unit apartment building. And so that was the very first property that I ever bought. And then since then, I've gone on to get involved in larger commercial multifamily acquisitions. To date, we've acquired over $100 million of commercial multifamily real estate. We structure those as syndications, and we allow members of our investor network to invest alongside us in those opportunities, in addition to continuing to serve our clients and helping them to buy top performing investment property here in Utah. So that's a little bit about my background and my focus. Jocelyn, like, you and I connected because we worked together on a real estate transaction. And I'm just so super stoked to be associated with you and hopefully to expose your story to as many people as we possibly can through this podcast, because you are really a rock star. And what you've done is incredible and should be inspiring to so many people that are looking to get started. So I want you to quickly, because I am going to interview in full length down the road, but quickly share your story about, how you got started, because it's an incredible journey.
Yeah, thanks, David. So first of all, I just want to touch on what you said is not everyone starts at the same age or at the same place. And so it's important for everyone to know that you can do it. Like, anyone can get started in real estate investing. As long as you're willing to educate yourself and work hard, anyone could do it. So me, I never really had like a huge interest in real estate. I always make the joke that I accidentally became a real estate investor. But I think I started thinking about real estate as early as 2008. My mom lost her house in 2008 and my family was homeless. So I learned a lot from that. I was 16. I know I'm super old. I was 16 and I remember thinking, like, I was almost mad at my mom. Like, how could you let this happen to us? But I also understood how it happened. And I wanted to do everything in my power to never be in that position. And so as early as 16, I understood that I never wanted to get a loan that I couldn't afford, or I never wanted to be dependent on one line of work. And so I went to college. I played softball. I got a softball scholarship and I double majored. I wanted to set myself up for as many job opportunities as possible. And when I graduated, I actually got to play softball in Sweden, which was cool. I came back home and got my very first legit job. I worked at Cold Stone for like a month in college, but that was it. So I got my very first job and it was a high school teacher and a head softball coach. And I remember the third day of teacher orientation, there was a teacher presenting and she was 40 years. She'd been teaching for 20 years and she said, "I cannot wait to retire in 20 years. And I was like, what the heck? This lady has been teaching for 20 years. That's longer. That's like almost as long as I've been alive to this point. And she's going to have to teach for another 20 years. And she's not making a ton of money. Like, we all know teachers don't make a ton of money. And even when she does retire, is she going to be able to retire? Like, is she going to have enough money to even retire?" And so that night I went home and I came up with this whole plan of how I was going to start saving enough money to buy my first property. And so I went home, I created a budget, I started saving every single month, and 6 months later, I had $12,000 saved up. I felt like I was rich. It is the most money I've ever had in my entire life. And I went out and found a mother-in-law house and bought it. And I fixed it up, learned how to do most construction projects myself, and I fixed it up and I rented it out. rented out the upstairs unit, and it paid for everything. And now I was living for free. And that moment was so relieving because I remembered my mom losing her house and how hard it was for her to dig herself out of that hole. And I now had set myself up to a place where I didn't have to pay for my living expenses. And then 6 months later, I was finished with the whole place. I had the upstairs rented out. I was living downstairs for free. And then I bought another duplex. And again, just increased my cash flow, my net income. And then I bought a 10plex and then a 13plex and then a 16plex, and it just kind of snowballed. Along the line, I became a realtor. I wanted to help other people invest in real estate. I retired from teaching. I always make that joke. I'm retired. I taught for 4 years at high school. I'm still the high school head softball coach, but as far as teaching, I was kind of done there. And now I want to teach other people how to create financial freedom with real estate. So that's kind of my passion now, is helping other people create their freedom and the life that they want to live. And so when David approached me about this podcast and working with him, it was perfect. It was right along the lines of what I wanted to do. And I felt that we could really provide something very valuable for brand new investors. And we want to provide something that we wish that we had when we were starting out. And so that's our goal, is to give you guys the tools and the resources to just have all the knowledge that you need, get into that first investment, get motivated, hopefully, and you just get it done. So David, do you have anything?
I think the only thing I'd add to that, first off, yeah, your story is incredible. And we're going to give the listeners a lot more detail about your story and how you actually accomplished what you've accomplished. But I think I want to just reiterate this point. You and I have completely different backgrounds. We're completely different ages. I'm quite a bit older than you. You're a little bit younger. You're going to be able to relate to, or the listeners who are younger in that stage of life. Maybe they're just starting families or they don't have families yet, and they're wanting to get started in investing early on. And then those others that are further along, that are behind the curve, and are frustrated because they aren't where they want to be financially. Both of those type of people, wherever you're at in that situation, we're going to be able to provide content and guidance for you to take action that's going to lead to results. And so that's what we want to accomplish. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be able to be a part of what Jocelyn's got going on, and hopefully to add my own perspective.
Yeah, we can't wait to share our knowledge with you guys, bring on some great guests, and hopefully motivate you guys to take that first step or buy your second or third property as well. So that's it for today. For more daily investing tips and real estate secrets, don't forget to visit breakfreerealestate.com and make sure to like, subscribe, and share our podcast. We will see you tomorrow.